Okay, we're going to start the meeting. We're going to try this tonight with, I will read a recommended motion, and then if the directors would identify themselves and either say motion to approve the recommended motion, and then a second, or if you have a different motion, just make sure you speak up so we can get that in there correctly for recorded minutes. That was Jake's idea for it to move smoother, and so we're going to try to do that, okay? I'm also going to have Dave watch the clock for me for the 5:45 public hearing. I'm not able to see it with the way the camera's set up. So we're going to start with roll call. All directors are present via online. Do I have a director that will read the mission and vision statement?
Can we pull it up? Oh, wait.
There it is.
All right. I can do this. This is Dr. Lala. I can do it. So our district mission statement is providing quality education for all in a caring and responsive environment. And our vision statement is the Mason City Community School District provides responsive learning opportunities grounded in collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity for all students. As a community, we are committed to preparing today's learners for tomorrow's future through our authentic and relevant tasks.
Thanks, Director Lala. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda. This is Director Katie Kaler.
Is there a second?
Well, it's Dr. Lala, I'll second.
So I have a motion and second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We're on to celebrate success and good news. Dave?
We have a few winter sports awards that were earned this winter, and so please check the agenda attachment for some outstanding efforts by our high school student athletes.
That was a short one this time, huh? Okay, we're on to consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Director Schweitzer will make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Is there a second?
Director Castle will second.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Where are we at for time?
We'll go to the COVID-19 response.
Okay. We're gonna, because we have to go at 5:45 for the public hearing, we're gonna go down to the information, non-action items, to the COVID-19 response. Dave?
We have some staff here that will give the board and the community an update on how our response has gone to COVID-19. And to start out, we will have Sarah Mariner talk about the food program.
Alrighty. So we are serving an average of 550 children per day with this program. We started in the beginning with only one delivery truck going to the schools and one delivery van to the home house. And we are now up to 2 delivery trucks, one to each school, and then 3 home delivery routes, so we're up to 3 vans. So it just shows that it's a very needed program. Like I said, we serve about 550 children per day, which ends up being about 2,700 per week that we serve. So that's pretty impressive, I have to say. It's ran as a summer food service program, so that's how we're getting our reimbursement. It will depend what the state says, how we're gonna actually proceed with the June, July, and August summer food service program. So that's kind of up in the air, and I don't really have answers with that yet. But the food service staff who have stepped up to help, they've been absolutely amazing and definitely could not have accomplished this without all of them. So it's been a huge task, but it's been a learning process, and I think we definitely have a very good routine now with it.
So Sarah, my question would be if a board member or somebody wanted to volunteer their time, would they just email you, call you to help on a day to deliver food? How would we do that?
Yeah, everything's been going through Dawn Assen, who's at CERT, so she's been lining up all of our volunteers for us, taking that task off of us, and she's been tremendous. So she lines up all that, so if anybody's interested in that, Dawn Assen is the one who's been in charge of that.
And what was that last name?
Asenhus, A-U-S.
Okay.
She is a Lincoln City school employee, so.
This is Director Lala. I just have a question concerning that. We're paying our staff, so do we need volunteers? I mean, I know, can we pull any staff into that if you're struggling for volunteers?
Most of them have been teachers who have stepped up and done it. Actually, all of them. I don't know of anybody outside that has helped. They all have been teachers who have helped. Originally, food service started as it, and it was kind of a lot for us to take on, and then if they needed more meals or anything like that, we weren't able to get them out in a timely manner. So now, having our food service staff back, it's helped, and it's been teachers who have been volunteering.
Yeah, I didn't mean just food service staff. I meant
No,
any
no.
staff. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, and if you call Dawn, it's so quick. I know been given opportunities to do it, and it is heartwarming, very heartwarming. The service you have provided our kids in this community is so necessary. So I want to thank you and all the people, like Randy and everybody, all the teachers. It's just been a wonderful, warm community thing, so thank you.
Not a problem. I agree, though. Totally took a team effort, and it's been awesome.
It's great, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, let's hear from Heidi Venom about our social emotional connections we're making with students and families.
So the social emotional connections team was created to make sure that we're reaching out to all families. The building principals and teachers have done an amazing job of reaching families and making sure that they've reached out to them. As they struggle with any families that they're not able to get in touch with, they'll refer that family name on to us. And then we've done some additional research to try to reach out with families. So because of right now, the buildings are still doing a great job with those connections. They haven't sent a lot of numbers over to us, but they'll continue to do so. The connections that this team already has with families, that's where most of our supports have been right now, and that's helping families get their basic needs met, among other things like questions that they would have. And that's all just from the relationships that they have with the families initially. We're also keeping tabs on lots of our students receive social emotional supports from outside service providers, so we've been in contact with them to make sure that the kids are still getting what they need. And the numbers are down, but both Francis Lauer Youth Services and Turning Leaf together, they're both providing telehealth services for students. And we do have students participating in that.
Is there any questions from the board?
Do you know how many students we have?
That are participating?
Participating, yeah.
So normally in the, during the regular school year, like at Turning Leaf, for example, we have 106 students that are receiving services. So right now we only have 17 of them that are participating in the telehealth. So Turning Leaf, it continues to reach out to try to get those kiddos to be able to participate. At YSS, there's, and this is their agency-wide, but we have 255 adolescent age students receiving services there. And because their appointments might be like on a 1 to 3 month basis, it's unknown at this time, like exactly how many of that are participating, but they're gonna begin keeping track of that number for us and share it with us.
Thank you.
This is.
I have it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dr. Lala. So what are we doing for kids that, not everyone has internet access and telehealth requires that? So what are we doing for those families?
Right, so we're reaching out to those families to find out if we can help problem solve any of those issues. Ryan from the district has given us some options that we're able to talk through with families and share that information with them. Also, they do phone conversations, and Turning Leaf is still open, and so some of our families have decided to come on site to receive those services as well.
All right, thank you.
That was the question I had, so thank you.
Where are we on time, Dave?
About 2 minutes.
You got time for one more person or no?
Yeah, we're gonna let Susan get started, but Susan, I'm gonna cut you off at 5:45 for the public hearing.
Okay, I'll talk fast.
No, just stop. We'll just stop you and then you can pick up after the hearing. No problem.
Oh, okay. Well, this work actually began when we learned that schools were going to be closed through April 13th. And then on April 2nd, we learned that in fact it was going to be closed through the 30th. We focused at first, as you heard earlier, really thinking about the food needs of our students and our Mohawk Food Bank, and worked to make sure that that was being distributed to families. And then the Learning Committee was charged with thinking about how are we going to meet students' needs through April 30th. We had 3 options through the Iowa Department of Education, and we chose the voluntary educational enrichment opportunity. And our task between April 2nd and April 10th was to scale up learning opportunities that would be available to students that would begin on April 13th. So this was really a team effort with that committee and staff members who did an amazing job to put all of this together. We had specific areas we had to attend to per guidance from the Department of Education. One of those being teacher and student expectations and how we were going to meet those. Our teacher teams were identified to design the content that would be delivered to students. Instructional coaches supported the design of that content and checked all the technology aspects of it to make sure it would be up and working. We made sure that students would have access to educational opportunities each week, but the schedules for how that learning would take place in each family because we felt that families have different needs at different times. We established virtual office hours for family and students to access their teachers, and then promoted students' well-being by including in our educational opportunities physical activities, socialization, and limitations of screen time. In addition, our guidance counselors and social workers also had virtual office hours so that they can meet the needs of the families they serve.
Thanks, Susan. We'll pick this up in a few minutes. So it's 5:45. It's time for a public hearing on the proposed issuance of $37 million in school infrastructure sales and service and use tax revenue and refunding bonds. If somebody has a comment they would like to make about this hearing, please call 641-450-5028. 641-450-5028.
And we'll give a few minutes for those phone calls.
This is Director Schweitzer. Would it be an appropriate time as we're waiting for those comments to come in to, I know we covered this once before, but just for public digestion that we're asking for more, we're allotting for more for the bond versus what we might actually bond for? Or is that gonna come later? Would that be more appropriate?
No, we can lay that out again. So there's several parts to the $37 million. The big part is the use of SAVE for the pool and the gym construction project, which is approximately $25 million. And we have approximately $12 million in restructuring current debt, SAVE debt. and into a more attractive package for issuance and borrowing. And then there's the other 2 million is for some other costs that we have associated with the selling of bonds, legal services, financial services. So this is like putting out an amount. This is the most we would borrow. It's highly unlikely we would borrow this much or restructure our current debt and new debt for this much.
Give it about 2 more minutes, 1 more minute for the phone call. Think we're good?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing for comments. Okay, I'm going to read a resolution. Again, the recommendation of the, excuse me, of the motion. So you would just need to say that you don't have to reread the recommendation, is what I'm saying, unless you have a different motion. The recommendation is to adopt the resolution supporting the proposed issuance of approximately 37 million school structured sales, services, and use tax revenue and refunding bonds. Is there a motion for that?
This is Director Lala. I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Director Schweitzer.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
If you didn't hear me, Director Schweitzer will second that.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote, but it's a roll call vote that is required. So Dave?
Director Lala,
Yes.
Director Schweitzer,
Yes.
Director Kaler,
Yes.
Director Castle,
Yes.
Director Seaton,
Yes.
Director Steckman,
Yes.
Director Draper.
Yes. Motion passes. We're back to information and non-action items.
Susan, pick us up on learning.
Okay, so our first piece that we had to look at that we just talked about were teacher and student expectations. We then had to describe the delivery platforms that we would be using. Our technology integration coaches, along with the support from our instructional coaches, designed a website that would allow students access to content PK through 12. We then also looked at what might be some platforms that teachers would want to be using in the delivery of that content. So we focused on the use of Seesaw in the K2 level and Google Classroom in grades 3 through 12. And then our teacher librarian also created a list of teacher resources. So it could be a one-stop shop for our teachers to find information and they wouldn't have to do the searching themselves. The third component we had was communicating with our internal and external stakeholders. We worked with the communication committee to push out information to staff so they would know how we were progressing in this work and their role in this work and what we needed from them, and they stepped right up. We also then had a category around professional development and teacher competency. We had some teachers that had more experience than others in working with online digital content. So we provided some professional learning on how to access the website, how to manage their content, and then also reinstated our early out schedule for Wednesdays. This provided data teams time to collaborate with one another and also principals the opportunity to access their staff to work through any issues that might be taking place at the building level or a way to gather together and discuss the content and things they'd be providing. The last category was student access. We provided access to devices and materials Thursday and Friday, April 9th and 10th. We provided print materials for all students PK through 2, and those went out on Friday, April 10th. And then we provided print materials as requested. Those went out on April 10th and continued after that based on parent requests. In addition, we've been providing special education, ELL, gifted and talented options for students as part of the learning. And then also have credit recovery options for our seniors and students that are already taking advantage of that in their work. So April 13th comes about, and we felt so good about the work. I mean, people really stepped up, and we collaborated together, and as I shared with them, I think this is what collective efficacy looks like at its finest, because they did an amazing job. Then we learned right after that that there was a possibility we'd be closed for the remainder of the year. It was still unclear at that time, so our team decided to move into a phase 2 focus around this plan, and started really thinking about what is the data we're going to be collecting on student participation and engagement. And we will be collecting participation data through Google Analytics, which will allow us to know when students are accessing, how frequently they're accessing that information, what might be content that might be accessed more frequently, different times of the day when students are accessing content, and we're just starting to gather that information now. In addition, we are collecting feedback contacts between teachers and students at the building levels. This is our first week of having a Google form in place that allows us to collect that across buildings. So we'll be gathering that data. So we felt not only we want the participation, but we really want to know the communication that's going on between teachers and students. In addition to that, we're also now looking at progress reports and how are we going to communicate with our families as to where their students are. And this would be true PK8 as well as at the high school level. At the high school level, we're also looking at thinking about how do we communicate with our seniors? What is that going to look like for them? What are some of the activities that we are going to be having for them? And thinking about the communication to families so they're in the know about how that'll be progressing. And we do have a high school learning committee that's really attending to some of those details that are specific to the high school. And then at the elementary level, PK through 8 and our freshmen through juniors, we're looking at how are we going to communicate student progress as it remains for the rest of this year. So beyond that, we're seeking out additional delivery platforms that might be available. Ryan had provided us the internet options that were available to families in the community, but if dollars become available, we'd like to seek out some other hotspots and possibilities for families that might be available. We're also working with our stakeholders and thinking about how do we continue to communicate with our families so they are in the know as we progress through this work that's very fluid right now. We are upping our professional learning around specific areas for teachers. Google Classroom, Flipgrid, and Seesaw have been some requests that we've had. In addition to that, we also have had requests for providing professional learning to students on how to interact in a digital learning environment from a student stance, and so we're working on those as well. And then finally looking at how do we monitor the distribution of our content, incorporate strategies in the educational opportunities that we feel are showing some success, and then working with teachers to design educational opportunities that are responsive to our student needs. So once we learned that the school year was going to be closed for the remainder of this year, we feel like we've got a good committee in place. The work has been moving along, and now we're just going to keep going forward with our plan and making adjustments as we need to based on what we learn as we move day by day through this. But I do want to emphasize that throughout this entire process, our focus has been on the health and safety for our families, and that's been our guiding principle as we've gone through this work. In addition to that, we feel at this point that we're positioned well to move forward to be responsive to our student needs as this unfolds for us. So it's been a very, very good group to bring this work forward, and the teachers and staff and principals have absolutely been amazing.
Thanks, Susan. Is there any board questions or comments for Susan?
Hi, Susan. This is Director Kaler, and yeah, I do have a couple questions. I know this is just amazingly new and quite adventure. Some of the questions that have been brought up to me, and I always tell them to contact the principal or the superintendent. There are some students at the high school level that are very, very concerned. They have straight A's right now. They are very concerned about what's going to happen with that progress. And same with students who were not doing so well, and they thought I have 8 more weeks to bring up my grade and be a better student. And so now there's like a little freaking out, but hopefully you guys have communicated and that's calmed down a little bit. And then, okay, so that's one question, or 100.
Well, no, and that's been conversations at the high school level. I do know that the state of Iowa is granting a lot of leniency with our seniors to ensure that they have what they need to graduate. So the students that might have thought they had 8 more weeks and don't, we're working with them to be sure that they have what they need. We don't want to penalize students. None of this is their fault. And so we're working to be as responsive as we can, and as I said, we have quite a bit of latitude through the Iowa Department of Education, so we're taking advantage of the latitude that we have.
Okay, great. The other question I have is, do you know the percentage, and I know it changes on a daily basis, I believe it changes on a daily basis, but a percentage of the students that are participating, not just at high school, but who our schools have been able to reach? I know that writing has been sent out and mailed out. I mean, every avenue has been covered, but I'm just wondering about how many people you think are participating.
We are starting to track that this Monday was our first day of tracking it week long. So we'll be able to share that with you at the conclusion of this week. Principals and their staff are now tracking that. And then we'll have the Google Analytics data, which Ryan, I'm sure, can speak more about, that we, this would be our first full week of using that to analyze how frequently students are accessing the digital content.
Right, and I do have to compliment you guys because once again, here I go, I get emotional, but we have kids, high school kids who are homeless, you know, and elementary kids, and these kids are all taken care of. They are the adults in their family, many of them are, whether it be elementary or whatever, and not demanding beyond their capability is wonderful. I think that is great. So
Susan, I would like to, first I just want to say, if you're not speaking, to mute, even if you've asked a question, to mute while the staff is responding to you or someone else, because we're starting to get feedback.
Okay, I'll do that.
But Susan, I would also just like to say thank you and to the staff for your hard work at first and foremost making sure that our families and our students and our staff were safe and healthy, and then implementing to continue the education and working with the superintendent to get that done. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions or comments for Susan? Okay, Dave, who's next?
Next, Ryan Pfizer will talk about technology.
Okay, I'm just going to be sharing my screen out so you can see a little bit of the stuff I'm talking about. The IT team was pretty busy to get ready for this. We prepped about 2,000 Chromebooks in about 3 to 4 days. And some of the data that I have for you just to kind of show, up in here, these are the total devices that were picked up at these locations. So we did hand out currently 1,058 Chromebooks were picked up by students. And that is half of the Chromebooks, so half of the student population in those buildings were picking up devices to take home. At the high school, they're already on a take-home basis, and they have 1,100 Chromebooks there. So most of those people hopefully have them, and I know that the high school did a good job of handing out Chromebooks to students that left them over spring break or forgot them in their locker. So with the total take-home devices we have for kids right now, it's well over 2,000. So we hit about 67% of the kids with giving them devices. Now, a lot of the kids that did pick up a device probably have a device at home already, computer, Chromebook, tablet that they can currently use. So I thought we did a really good job of getting the technology out to the students to get this learning started. And then I just want to talk a little bit about the Google Analytics, just to kind of show you what we can track. Because right now it's only through from last Thursday, and I pulled this data at noon today. Just to kind of show you, this is page views. So this is how many times the pages are being viewed on our learning site. And as you can see on Thursday, Friday, we're sitting at about 3,000. But then already just this morning we had 2,800. So I'm expecting that to be about triple that since all the new content just went out at the start of the week. So I think these numbers were a little bit low. But with this Google Analytics, we kind of track to see how many page views that we're getting on everything. And then we can also see active users. So what this active users is every new user that logs in. So if someone logs in multiple times, it doesn't track them. So we know that, like for instance, this morning we had 530 people log in to the site and start viewing data. So with this, as we get like a full weekend, we'll be able to see exactly how many people are actually accessing all of our learning opportunities. And as you can see, over just the 2.5 days that we already had about 1,600 people that were in there. And then lastly, just some kind of interesting information. We can see what time of day is kind of the hot spots for kids accessing. So what that'll do for us is basically allow staff to see when they should be making themselves available, what time a day these kids are accessing the content. And then we can also track what type of devices are being used, so we can see if those Chromebooks are actually being used. And right now, about almost 70% of the usage on our site is through desktop or Chromebook, and only about 3% on tablets, which would be like the iPads. And then we can also track the most viewed pages, so we can see exactly what content our students are accessing. So that way we can see if there's a certain subject or page or grade level that isn't being accessed as much. We can use that data to reach out and see how we can communicate with those kids to get them to interact a little bit more, and that way we kind of can tell who we need to reach out to. But overall, the IT department, I think, especially the IT guys, I think they did a lot of hard work getting ready for this, because that was a lot of devices to try to get prepped and sent out. Then also on the learning site, we created a technology help desk page for parents and students where they could go for some frequently asked questions. So if we had some common issues that came up, I've already made a couple little how-to guides on there that we can refer students or parents to look at how to fix some of those issues. And I also made a help desk on there for students as well. So if they're having technical difficulties with their Chromebook, as long as they can get to the learning site, they can submit a help desk ticket, and then the IT department is reaching out to students to help them out when needed.
Is there any questions from the board or comments? Thank you, Ryan, and for your IT team for all your hard work and making sure that our students have access, and our staff.
Next, because we have a lot of questions around high school issues, Principal Dan Long is here to answer some of those frequently asked questions about what's going to happen at the high school this spring. Dan.
Thanks, Dave. We really I want to try to break this down into two different tiers tonight and give a summary of each. The first one really starts with our seniors. I think certainly with the decision on Friday to close schools for the remainder of the year, we know that resonated and impacted our seniors significantly. So when we look at seniors specifically, first we look at credits. That there's certainly flexibility right now that's in place for students in making sure that they have a pathway to be able to earn their credits. One of the benefits right now is that the state has provided some extra latitude, so any student that was, say, behind prior to our school closure is able to actually submit work, get it graded for anything that was going on before, so that we've got an active plan for
So,
all of our
Jody,
seniors
after him, let's go back to the
to be
open
able
forum.
to working towards that credit and that course completion. There was a question about GPA earlier tonight already, and that's also a piece that's directly a part of that planning to make sure that this isn't students are not penalized in any way, and so our planning, those conversations that are going on are looking for structures and supports to make sure that a student's GPA is not negatively impacted for these conditions and variables that are simply outside of their control. Once we get beyond that, then you really recognize that there's an emotional part of this, and some of that is the fact that our seniors are missing out on some pretty significant things. So two of those specifically that I'd like to highlight are the senior awards ceremony and graduation. A lot of questions certainly regarding around that, and the first assurance that I would provide is to make sure that everyone knows we do have a committee that's having those conversations, that's planning for that, to make sure that we can adjust and do things in an appropriate manner. So our goal initially, our goal at this time is to continue to have.
We lost you.
Obviously, that needs to be considered in a different format, an example being our senior award ceremony. With school being canceled, there's no way for us to bring people in and do an award ceremony in person. So that means that we've got to look for a way to provide that virtually or in a different format. So, but regardless of that, all scholarships, all senior awards, everything will continue to be awarded, and we'll recognize our students on all levels just as we would in any other manner, just recognizing that that's probably going to look a little bit different. That's why we've got a committee in place to be able to do some of that planning. Graduation in a similar sense. Our hope and goal is that restrictions will be lifted and we'll be able to have something in person, just as we do every other year. But also we recognize that simply may not be possible. And that's something that we believe it's important that we're able to communicate that this is going to happen, and that if needed, we'll have an appropriate alternative to that may consider things in a virtual sense for different things such as speeches, making sure that we still have our senior speeches as a part of graduation, make sure that there's a way to do some sort of senior spotlight so that we're recognizing all of those individuals, because that's a big part of graduation. There's a piece where you're doing that together as a group, but there's also that individual recognition. And so, that last piece then would be exploring different options for how we would actually issue diplomas. Again, the mindset behind all of that is make sure we look to do this in a meaningful way. And so if we're not able to do that in person, we do have planning going on to be able to do this in a meaningful way and make sure that all students have that. To help with some of this, we actually sent out a survey to our students over the weekend, to our seniors, to help get some information and some input from them, because it's part of that student voice and choice. One, we want to make sure if we do things in a virtual sense that we've got information to help recognize. The other is get some input from our seniors so that we can make informed decisions, that we know we can make a pretty good prediction that it is going to be meaningful because we've sought out their input. And that also included an email out to our senior parents over the weekend. So just want to make sure addressed seniors first. We are looking at all of those significant events that come up here at the end of the year and are looking for some creative alternatives and ways just to recognize and celebrate and try to bring some closure to their high school careers. The other side of that then is what do we do with grades 9 through 11? And so again, in similar standpoint is we start by looking at credits. The nice thing is that we've been able to get some things started where we're providing opportunities for our students every week. We can individualize that for students at the level that they're ready. So if a student is really wanting more, we've got the ability to provide more, but we've got a consistent baseline structure for everybody to try to keep from overwhelming. On the other side of that, we've been able to open the door and provide some makeup work opportunities so that students that were behind prior to spring break are able to do some makeup work so that they know that's going to count, that they're going to get some credit for it, that they will get credit for their courses. And again, making sure that we do these things, just as I mentioned, in a way that it does not impact anyone negatively, don't impact their GPA in a negative way, that we really just find ways to inform and support, make sure that we've got some flexible ways for kids to be earning their credits. And I think that's put us in position, based on what we've done already, to continue to build off of that with the school closure throughout the rest of the school year, so that we've got a successful path to finish out this school year, and also even starting to look ahead of other opportunities, summer school potentially. What does the start of next school year look like when kids come back? So those are all things being considered at the high school at this time.
Is there any questions from the board for Mr. Long?
This is Director Schweitzer. What about some of those that are have concurrent enrollment with NIAC? Any input or any thoughts, or maybe some of the dialogue that you've had surrounding that?
Yeah, concurrent enrollment was one of the first things to come out, because that was actually dictated at the college level, because NIAC courses are all continuing in an online format. So all of the instructors reached out and contacted all of the students. That included our high school students, talked to them about the format. And so that is something that's been able to continue to go on in an online format, and is required for all of those students, because it's a concurrent enrollment.
Is there any other comments or questions?
And I think you were the last one to go, Mr. Long, but I know that there's been some discussions, and we had them, I think, last month around students, like the personal belongings and what we're communicating. We're still asking parents not to show up at the schools, expecting to gain admission, if you will. Has there been, or what's the thought process so far about how, especially with the seniors, but getting people their personal belongings, and subsequently turning in any school property that needs to be turned in before the official end of the school year, if you will?
Right, so we'll certainly have some communication, not only for the high school, but across the district, that will come out in terms of before the official end of the school year. You know, looking at that date of, okay, if you do have personal items that you need to come pick up, to make sure that there are arrangements, and we have had some planning. We've got a good structure in place so that we're ready to address that when that comes up. Right now, our focus has been making sure that we're providing any of the resources and things that kids need for learning, and following that within the guidance with public health. They've been a good partner with us in making sure that we do this in a way that achieves the need, but then works with everybody so that we're being safe.
Is there any other comments or questions for Mr. Long? Okay, we had to pass over the open forum to hit our public hearing, and we had started our information non-action items. So now we will go back to hit our open forum, and the same phone number to call in, Dave?
Yes.
Which is 641-450-5028. This is the open forum, and for this open forum, it has to be to address anything on our action items. We'll give it about a minute. I do want to say thanks to Mr. Long and the high school staff too for addressing senior issues. It is very emotional for them at this time. Very different to end their school year. It's been about 60 seconds. I can't see that clock. Okay, we're going to close the open forum. We're going to move on to action items. Is there a recommendation to approve the payment of the bills presented?
Director Schweitzer, I'll make a motion.
Director Castle, second.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the payment of the bills presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We're on to resolution, pandemic responses and emergency suspension of policy. Is there a recommendation to adopt the second resolution, pandemic response and emergency suspension of policy as presented?
I recommend that we pass the pandemic response and emergency suspension policy.
Okay, is there a second?
Director Lala, I'll second that.
Okay, and Katie was the motion.
Yes, Director Kaler, I have a really bad habit of not doing that.
You're fine. Okay, so this is a roll call vote required. Dave?
Director Lala,
Yes.
Point of order.
Oh, did you want discussion? I'm
Is there
sorry.
any discussion?
Yes, there is, Jake. I'm sorry.
But that's all right. Because it looks like, again, and I think we dealt with this a little bit last time, is that this will run through the end of April. Now that school is officially closed, is there going to be either another resolution, or can we modify this resolution and then date it rather than April 30th, date it for the June, whatever the last day of school is? Would that be prudent at this time, or are you going to bring forward another resolution in May?
We are going to have to bring forward another resolution in May because the governor's order only goes through the 30th of April. And so, and that's what this resolution is based on. So the governor will issue a new executive order after April 30th, and we'll have a new resolution then for you in May.
Very good, no further questions, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, now I'll call for the roll call vote. Sorry about that.
Director Lala,
Yes.
Director Schweitzer,
Yes.
Director Kaler,
Yes.
Director Castle,
Yes.
Director Seaton,
Yes.
Director Steckman,
Yes.
Director Draper,
Yes. Motion passes. We're on to Memorandum of Understanding, MCEA. The recommendation is to approve the Memorandum of Understanding by and between the Mason City Education Association and Mason City Community School District to modify the provision of the 2019-2022 collective bargaining agreement to permit the employees of the association to continue to receive pay while classes are canceled, and to address making up canceled days for the period beginning March 16th, 2020, and continue through April 28th, 2020. Should that be 2020 up there on collective bargaining?
no.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Who is that?
Alan.
Okay. Director Steckman? Is there a second?
Director Kaler seconds.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We're on to D, Memorandum of Understanding, the Teamsters Local Number 238 Paraprofessionals. The recommendation to approve the Memorandum of Understanding by and between Teamsters Local Union Number 238 Paraprofessionals and Mason City Community School District employer to modify the provisions of the 2018 through 2020 collective bargaining agreement to permit paraprofessionals to continue to receive pay while classes are canceled, and waive the requirement that canceled work days may be made up for the period beginning March 16th, 2020 and continuing through April 30th, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Director Steckman?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Director Lala, I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion?
This is Director Schweitzer. Just, and this might just be something to think. The MOU with MECA has it through April 28th, and then the MOUs with the paraprofessionals and food services through April 30th. That might just be a typo, maybe.
No, we had originally, we were gonna bring the teachers back to work the 2 days prior to school starting, if school was gonna start up. But there's a reversion clause in the MCA memorandum of understanding that if school was canceled further, that it would run through the 30th. So there is consistency there.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We are on to E, Memorandum of Understanding with Teamsters Local 238 Food Service Employees. The recommendation is to approve the Memorandum of Understanding by and between Teamsters Local Union Number 238 Food Service Employees and Mason City Community School District Employer to modify the provisions of the 2018 through 2020 collective bargaining agreement to permit food service employees to continue to receive pay while classes are canceled for the period beginning March 16th, 2020 and continuing through April 30th, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved. Director Steckman.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Director Castle.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We're on,
Jody, could I just, I don't know the proper time to bring this up, so you guys just let me know. I just wanted, Tom to clarify what's happening to the employees that aren't represented by a union.
Those employees not represented by a union are covered under the resolution that you adopted earlier.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
okay. We are on to F, approval of agreement for annual audit services. The recommendation is to approve the 4-year agreement between Mason City Community School District and Hogan and Hanson to perform the annual audit of the district required by Section 11.6 Code of Iowa for the year ending June 30th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved. This is Director Steckman.
Is there a second?
It's Director Lala, I can second that.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? I have a question. I don't know if it would be for Sherry or for you, Dave. So for Hogan and Hanson, did we look at any other auditing firms and price them out?
Sherry can answer that best.
This is Sherry. We only received Hogan and Hanson's back. We received other denial letters, but they wanted us to keep them on the mailing for the next time it goes out.
So, but you did try. Yeah, I mean, you
Yes, we
did
did.
like reach
12
out.
others.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Is there any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We are on to G, approval of administrator contract 7 through 12 Activities Director. The recommendation is to approve the administrator contract for Tracy Johnson to serve as the 7 through 12 Activities Director for the 2020 through 2021 contract year beginning July 1st, 2020. Is there a motion?
Director Schweitzer will make the motion.
Is there a second?
Director Castle.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. On to H, approval of administrator contract, Hoover Elementary Principal. The recommendation is to approve the administrator contract for Sarah Grimm to serve as the Hoover Elementary Principal for the 2020-2021 contract year beginning July 1st, 2020. Is there a motion?
Director Kaler makes the motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Dr. Walla, I'll second that.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? I would just like to point out for both of these, we used our pay matrix and hit it
Correct.
right on the target so that there was,
Correct.
yep. So good job for that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Right?
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Equipment Maintenance and Repair Program. The recommendation is to accept the proposed submitted by, well,
It's blank.
right, insert
After the
company.
discussion and motion, then we'll
Yep,
have something, and Sherry can explain that to you.
and so you'll have to pick your company when we get there. I apologize, I didn't have them listed out for, I didn't write them down. To provide the equipment maintenance and repair program for the district. Is there a motion to discuss?
I'll make that motion. This is Dr. Lala.
Is there a second?
Director Kaler will second it. And this is just for discussion, right?
Yeah, because we won't have the motion and the original until we pick a company to say, or not pick one, whatever you guys decide as you go through.
Yep.
This is just to discuss, aye. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to discuss. Is there any discussion to discuss?
I would suggest you get some comments from Sherry and Ryan.
Okay. Sherry?
Yes, I had earlier in the week sent all of you both proposals for you to look at so that you kind of knew where we were sitting with both companies, at the same companies that we did last year as well. At this point in time, Remy has come in at $118,772 with $75 for the in-house repair that we use for the technology. And then the company SUI came in at $119,908. And they quoted $70 in-house per hour for reimbursement. And I know that is huge for Ryan and his IT techs because they're able to input the hours that they even just go in and look at a computer and assess it. So going from $70 to a $75 an hour in-house repair with Remy, along with the lower rate, it would be a benefit for us to switch over to Remy. And I know Ryan is working with his team and he can give you a little more information as to what they're logging right now for reimbursements.
Ryan?
Are you there, Ryan?
Yes, some of the things that we're logging right now, because currently with distributing all these Chromebooks, we had to go through all of them and check them. And we pulled out around 50 to 60 of them that were broken. So in doing that, we can log about 15 minutes of time for every one that we had to assess. And then as these go in to be repaired, then we also are logging that time. So coming up, we still have another about 45 Chromebooks to repair. So overall, the program, we end up logging quite a bit, just because throughout the year, we have quite a bit of instances with screen repairs, broken keys. So the program is something that we can actively use and make good use of. And I also know that coming up with all these devices that we have sent home with students, as these come back, there's probably going to be an influx and a need for the service as we're getting these Chromebooks back, because I'm anticipating an influx in repairs from those.
So I'm just gonna ask you, Ryan, which company then do you prefer to work with?
I would, right now, I'm looking towards Remy, primarily because the way that we're doing it now, the way that we have had to log everything, I created some Google Forms and had to create a Google site and kind of manage the back end of it in order to get a smooth process working, whereas Remy already has an online portal to kind of streamline the process. So in terms of just the IT team being able to input these repairs from anywhere they're at in the district would just be a much easier process. Instead of us having to manage that system that's already provided by Remy. And then with the influx, going from $70 to $75 an hour would be a big benefit for us.
Okay. Any other board members have questions for Sherry or Ryan? Is there any comments from the board?
This is Director Schweitzer. My only question is, why are these documents confidential and couldn't be posted for the public's general consumption before we voted on them?
Because they were closed bids. They'll become public as soon as we're done.
So, like anytime, I think, so you don't have something posted and then somebody else goes in to underbid it. That's why they did it closed, because it was a competitive bid.
Well, sure, but once the date has lapsed, this is Director Schweitzer, once the date has lapsed, the bids are due by a certain date. Once they're there, then we're going to officially open them. They can't retroactively go back in there and bid just to try to undercut. I mean, if we're spending public dollars, unless it's something that has to do with safety.
But we have had, Director Schweitzer, we have had a company come back in, and then we allowed as a board for them to participate past the date, and then they chose not to participate after we did that. And so if I follow county process, their closed bids are closed and are opened in a meeting with the board members, and then they're made public after it's done. That's how they work their closed bids. So now I would have to have a motion, if there's no more discussion, to accept, but I would need a board member to what company, to insert the company name. Can you guys see the recommendation?
Can we get to it? Can you read that? To accept the proposal submitted by...
Can you guys see that screen?
Remy to provide the equipment maintenance and repair program for the district.
So do I have a board member who wants to make the recommendation on which company?
I'll
Yeah,
make the, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, you go ahead, I'm okay with that.
This is Director Lava, and I'm gonna say, Remy.
Okay. So you're making the motion to accept the proposal submitted by Remy to provide the equipment maintenance and repair program for the district.
Correct.
Is there a second?
This is Director Kaler, and I second it.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. So we're on to announcements, board report, committee reports, and correspondence. And before I hand it over to Dave, I want to let the board know, because it's at the correspondence, I received 2 thank yous from staff members. I won't say who they were because it was a sealed envelope to myself, but I want you guys to know that we have had staff members that are extremely appreciative that we have taken care of the families, the food, the process of that, and also making sure that our direct staff is being paid during that 2-week shutdown where we didn't know where we were at the first process of it. And then after the governor made the announcement, by the 13th, we needed to be online at some sort, voluntary or non-voluntary. And so they're very appreciative of the board looking out for the families in our community as well as our staff. And so I wanted to acknowledge to you guys the thank yous that we received for our votes the last few meetings.
I want to point out a couple dates for your calendar. First of all, May is the month of school board recognition. So we'll look forward to celebrating that with you. May 4th is the next board meeting, a committee of the whole meeting. It will not be a joint meeting with the School Improvement Advisory Committee. It will just be a board meeting of the whole. As Principal Long talked about tonight, think about commencement being June 7th as on the calendar. The time and the activities may change, but we are still planning on June 7th. We did not have any other committee reports. The Finance Committee did not meet tonight. And I do not have any further updates under administrative reports. I'll turn it over to Sherry to see if she has any.
Sherry, are you still on? We might have lost her. So maybe why she's trying to get back on, or Jake and I did, we represent the Finance Committee. We did discuss whether to meet or not, or have more, how to do that going forward. I worry the room that we meet in, we can't be 6 feet apart. And so how would we do that? And I think, Jake, would you, I can't remember your email back, would you give your suggestion?
Oh, well, so one of my thoughts is that the Finance Committee does dig in a little bit deeper on the finances, but I think the information is valuable. And I would say a third to a half of the information has gone over again, but at a very high level during the board meeting. So if it's not too cumbersome, maybe not dissolve the Finance Committee, but maybe just roll it into our stated meeting, and it may add another 10 or 15 minutes, but I think it's good information, especially with the newer board members, or even ones that have been on when I got on, that don't get as detailed in it. And maybe we try it for a month, and if it's too much, or you don't, if there isn't value added to having that as a component, then maybe Drake or myself, and we can just we can do a meeting with First Ag and Sherry Yoder as just our group. We could probably do that too. But my thought is just add it to the regular meeting.
What do you think, Dave or Sherry?
We can give that a try next time, sure.
Okay, Sherry, did you have anything for finance? Can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Yes, I'm here now.
Okay.
If you could pull up the FY 19-20 budget amendment, public hearing, Dave. So we are, this was posted in the paper that on May 4th, our next meeting that we...
Sorry, do I have it on the agenda?
Yes, it's under the Director of Finance Board.
Gotcha.
It's the first one on at the top. So since we file our budgets in April, last year we were still in discussion with health and dental and where premiums were going to sit. So when I filed the budget in April, we weren't quite sure as when the final quotes for the changes came in June. The amounts that we are going to have to amend are our instruction from $36,061,904 to $38,000,000 $950,000. I left some room in there because of what's going on with the COVID and an additional supplies that we're going to be sending out for students and not until we receive the additional funding from the state. Also, our total support services, we're also going to have to increase from $17,845,460 to $19,121,232. And the public hearing on that would be the May 4th meeting at 5:30. Dave, if you open up the key measures for March. So this is for March, and at this point in time, our general fund unspent authorized budget, we are sitting at 14.4% ratio, which is within the set of IASBO rules, not to exceed 25%, but it's between 5% and 15%. Our general fund unspent annual budget, authorized budget, we are going to end up spending more than what we had certified, and that's what the budget amendment is for in May, to increase that spending. But our solvency ratio continues to stay at 5.9%. And the second page, as you can see down at the bottom, where we have the variance under the certified budget comparison, it goes through the instructions, the support services, the non-instructional programs, and other. And this is what I use and utilize to project where we're going to sit at the end of the year. But I also added an additional amount under instruction to help pay for some of the issues that we're going to run into with the COVID and getting printed workout and postage and all that other information for the e-learning and home learning. Do you have any questions?
Do you think, I mean, I know it's a projection and we really can't tell, or we're, getting close to the end of the school year. It kind of goes maybe if we're going to go into summer school with, doing the e-learning to keep people or students caught up, and teachers with the time off, and then just by doing it by e-learning. Have we padded enough for that, do we think? Because this was unforeseen. I mean, she can't,
Right.
we don't know, but I'm just wondering the
And
money.
the biggest thing is right now, we're not paying overtime or gap for any of the paras. So
Okay,
that right there is a savings in itself.
okay.
But
We'd probably look to use those.
payroll. It's not just the payroll of what their regular hours are. So April is where we're going to start seeing the reports show what our actual costs are going to be through.
We probably will be able to access those care funds too from the federal government
Okay.
for summer
Absolutely.
school.
This is Director Steckman. You're not paying for subs anymore either.
No subs and the additional time.
Okay. And since we do some billing, and it might not be, but there's an HHS stimulus package out there, but you have to have Medicare billing, but it might just be for physicians. I didn't know because we do some unit billing here with taking care of patients. Was there any stimulus package for the schools on that?
No.
Okay. Is there any other questions or discussion? Okay, so we'll adjourn, and then there'll be a time for public comments again on anything, and we'll have that phone number. And then the board will move into, is it exempt session, correct?
Correct.
So is there a motion to adjourn?
Me. Director Castle make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Schweitzer.
Thanks, Jake. I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we have another spot for public comments. This area you can discuss with the board, actually present to the board anything. It didn't have to be anything on the agenda. The number to call in is 641-450-5028. And we'll give it about 30 seconds. If the phone doesn't ring, then we will head into our exempt session. Good? Okay.